through them, the majority, if you had the opportunity is yet to look at the question paper, you would see that the majority of the questions, there are 4 questions and they're based on ethics as well as corporate governance. And so these next 3 chapters are going to be pertinent to, you know, you answering your question 2. Has everybody had the opportunity to look at question 2 as yet?
Yes, I reviewed the questions.
Sorry, Dimitri, I didn't hear you.
Didn't read the questions. Yes, I did.
You read the questions, and what are your thoughts so far with the questions?
Typically, you got to research, but the questions seem to be straightforward, on the outset. I just, waiting on the group discussions to make sure that, I'm on the right track and with
You're on the right track.
Yeah, my outline and what have you.
Okay, you're breaking up a little bit, just a little bit. Okay, and so what about chapter 4? Have you had the opportunity to read chapter 4 as yet?
Yes, I have. I made some notes. I mean, chapter 4 is pretty to me, it's pretty it's right there, it's straightforward. So you just it reiterates a lot of stuff that we did in AML and the first phase of GRC, and it's but I did read it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, good. And what I've noticed over the next few chapters, it gives us some definitions about what ethics is, and what the values are, and what the expectation is at work. And a lot of times, of course, we have an employee handbook. We have a code of conduct. Most institutions, some institutions leverage off of the Bahamas Financial Services Board, and they just use their code of conduct rather than personalize it to their office. But nevertheless, is a good guide to tell us what we ought to do at work. And for the most part, I do agree that most of us know the definitions of ethics and values, and we know how we ought to act. But of course, we are human beings. And of course, a lot of these things are written in policies and procedures. And in some cases, they're not written in policy and procedures. But where they are written, do we still read these employee handbooks, or is this just a part of protocol? Are we truly working towards being ethical and having a compliant culture within our firms? Or it's just a piece of paper and it's protocol that has to be followed, and you have to give them a handbook or a code of conduct? And what's happening in our institutions today? Are we truly doing what these codes of conduct say? And if we are not, is anybody enforcing it? Are there any repercussions locally? I know there are many cases online. A very popular case that, of course, by now all of us should know is the Enron case. But do we truly act ethically at work? Do we truly follow what the handbook says or the code of conduct?
I don't think that I don't think a book makes you honest or dishonest. I think you already come with a foundation, who you are. I think people evolve into something else, but I don't think, I think if you come as a dishonest person, I think a code of conduct is not going to make you any different. You are who you are. I think the code of conduct might give you certain rules and regulations that are relative or significant to a particular institution. But I think pretty much you come as an individual and you come with your qualities and you come with who you are. I do believe that there are some persons that typically throughout their life, they've been honest, but they might find themselves in hard times or some other experience or just the want to be in a different position in life may cause persons to change. I don't believe it's so popular that people actually change back from being dishonest back to being honest, especially the Enron type people.
Right. Okay. Okay. Very good. And again, like you said, you come with being honest, or you come to work with this foundation, and hopefully you would have received that at home or in school or at church. And diversity is very big today, and we are supporting diversity. So we have many different types of people with many different beliefs. So what happens when we don't come with that foundation, and we did, or it definitely from house to house is different what is taught. So what happens in our institutions today? If like you said, you can't learn it. I mean, it's not just from the book. You have to come with it. But what happens when we don't have the same foundation?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Ms. Willard.
Morning, Annie. How are you today?
This is Jaffe.
Oh, Jaffe, good morning. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that expanding on what Maria was saying, it's true. Some people are just like innately dishonest. And they're gonna try whatever they can to like scheme around the system. However, that's also where I guess we would come in, ensuring that I guess we do checks and making sure that we have a system that is punitive in place, because some people, how I can say it, they can try regardless, right? But if they know that there are consequences there, they'll think twice. If they feel as though they could get away with it, they ain't gonna think at all.
Okay. But so we do have a lot of controls in place. So we are supposed to have a lot of controls in place to mitigate risk and to sway these people away from not doing what is right. But are they being enforced locally? Because we're dealing with human beings. And so I always believe wherever there are a group of persons, you have high, medium, and low performers. Correct? We don't live in perfect. And so you won't have everybody at a top performance level or doing everything they ought to do every day or all the time. So what do we do to encourage the right behavior? Or we have those people who are try to take advantage of the law, or they see a loophole, so they take advantage of persons. So what are we doing in our organizations? Are we accepting it? Is there an awareness? Again, when persons don't come with, like I say, the proper training or a good foundation, then what do we do? How is it being handled?
Well, any of the training that I've ever had professionally, it's always been training as it relates to products and services and customer service, that type of thing. You might have one-liners or two-liners about honesty and integrity, but it's never really drilled down on in the workplace. I think, I've been in financial services, and I think that pretty much people know basically from consequences. I worked for internal audit for about 6 years, and people know that if they do A, B, C, or D, this is what's going to happen. And people still do it anyway. I think, however, that's the purpose of internal audit, external audit. It's the purpose of verification of work and checks and different checks that different companies, banks or whatever have in place. It doesn't matter what you tell somebody. It doesn't matter how much you say something to somebody. People are going to use opportunities to do what they need to do. You have, like I said, you have honest people that come to your door honest, but because of certain things, they change or they take an opportunity. But firms really preaching and you know, telling people if you steal, this is what's going to happen. No. And as it relates to policies and procedures with respect to that type of thing, now at my age and I would say my exposure and my level of education now, yes, I would pull up a manual and look at it. Back in my 20s, no. Probably even back in my 30s, no. But that's me. I mean, maybe I was not a mature person. I've always been honest, but maybe not necessarily mature now at my age. Now I realize that maybe that's something I should have done, but I've always been an honest person. But nobody picks up the manual and sees, oh, if I do A, this is what's going to happen. If I do B, nobody really cares until the time comes. But no, to answer your question, I don't think, I think it happens by example. It leads, you lead by example. The tone should be set at the top. I remember I worked, there was a VP where I worked, and I don't know who tipped internal audit off, but she wanted a brand new vehicle, a very expensive brand new vehicle. And I guess because of her position, she knew that it would be approved, position and salary. She knew that it would have been approved. So she went ahead and got a manager to cut her a check to purchase this vehicle because apparently it was the last one of that color or last one, some details like that. And she got fired. She got fired for that. So not because she was a senior, because she was a senior employee. And I wouldn't call that directly dishonest, but that's like using your position, you know, to leverage opportunities for yourself. And of course, I could say that she was in charge of an area that oversaw dishonesty and blah, blah, blah. And she still did something like that. But that was because she was so sure of herself and her salary that she could do that. And she ended up almost getting the persons that she oversaw to sign off on that check. She almost got them fired as well, but she got fired. And we all know she knew better than that. You know, she knew better than that. And I mean, anybody, the most junior employee knows that you don't do that. So people just decide to do things that they want to do either for their personal gain. Well, most of the time it's for their personal gain, but in whichever way she decided to be dishonest, and that was her way to do it. And you know, it just depends. I was writing a paper recently for, I'm doing a master's program in fraud and risk, and I'd never heard about it, but it's the dark triad traits. And I just shared the link, and I never heard about it. Maybe other persons in the group have, but I had to do some research on what this dark triad trait thing is about. And it speaks about narcissism, psychopathy, and another M word that I could never pronounce. And it's really insightful. It speaks that all of us have the capability of being dishonest to a certain extent, but there are other persons based on the existence of these traits that go even further than the rest of us in their dishonesty. So I shared the link. So I don't know if anybody else has heard about it before, but it's very insightful, and you can probably use it when answering some of these questions, even if it's just a 1 or 2 liner.
Okay, Maria, thank you very much for sharing. And I want to just backtrack on what you said, like when you were, you know, starting off or younger in financial services. So what do we do? How do we make, you know, as compliance professionals, how do we make the policies attractive? How do we encourage, you know, the reading, and following what the policy says, because what happens, when new staff are onboarded, for the most part, is for the first 2 days, we print off at least 300 pages of policy and procedure and, a handbook and a manual, and we put you in our office and we let you read for 2 days. We ask you if you have any questions, they say no, and then we throw you out on the front line to sink or swim. Right? And so for the most part, that's training.
When I was at the, I worked at the US Embassy for a little over a year. And when I was there, something that they did the US Embassy, you can't get a job. Anybody who works for the embassy, they squeaky clean, because the US Embassy, I think they send drones to watch you in the night. But yeah, because people knew I was getting a job at the embassy. Before people would ask my husband around the street, hey, did Wells get the job at the embassy? They were all over the Bahamas asking about me. Okay. So one thing that they used there, you couldn't sign on to your workstation without answering a question. I don't remember if it was one, I know definitely it was one question. I remember it was 1 or 2 questions, but you could not get into your workstation unless you answered a question, and it was based on security and different things like that was pertinent, or what they thought were important that you knew. So I didn't have that when I was at the bank, but you could not get onto your workstation in the morning unless you answered a question. And I think that's a great tool, because you have to focus at that point. You know what I mean? You have to focus to get on your workstation, and maybe it can be every time you time out, you have another one to get back in. You have to answer it, and it makes you pay attention. So you are going to remember what it asked you. So I thought that was fabulous.
Yeah, and they took it from various policies.
Most of it was, the embassy is very much, a lot of it was about security. A lot about it was that. So whatever you need your staff to know, then design your questions accordingly. And that's something IT could do.
Okay, that's a very, very, very good idea.
I think we had an AML question. Our last AML paper had a question about different ways to
encourage persons.
It was something, and you had to list a bunch of them, and I stuck that in there. But definitely a sign-on question. I think definitely a sign. You can't get in your system unless you answer a question, and you could just take that from whatever. Yeah, I think that's perfect.
Yeah, it is. That's a very good idea. Very good idea. Simone, welcome. And thank you for joining us. Is Simone there?
Hi, good morning. Sorry, just joining. I was thinking we started at 9:30.
Right. Yeah. So we'll start next week. We'll come on at 9:30. For some reason, Miguel, started early, just I guess to make sure everybody would have gotten on okay. But we are just having a small discussion before we get into the lecture, and we're talking about ethics and the employee handbook and policy and procedure. And a lot of times, Maria had mentioned that, back in her 20s and 30s, she would not have referred, to a policy or even taken the time to read it. And not only Maria, just like most of us, right? And she said now she's mature, and she, has been in the financial services sector for a while. And so she does now refer to the policy to make sure that she's not only using her judgment, but doing what she ought to do and doing it right. And so my question is, how do we make these policies and procedures attractive? How do we get persons to, read, and not only that, follow what the procedure says, and where it does not make sense, challenge it, or have a discussion around it. What can we do? And she mentioned that while she was at the embassy, they had a question in order for you to get back into your system. And so that I was telling her that was a very good idea. But what do we do to make policy and procedure attractive, not only to the newcomers and the entry-level staff, but even to ourselves? Because as compliance professionals, we have to read a lot to, as our decisions are, we have to do research, and to make a decision, you have to have sufficient information in order to make hopefully the right decision. So what do we do to make it attractive or appealing?
Well, unfortunately, I think, a lot of us don't like to read. So, I mean, I
Yeah.
feel like it wouldn't be fair to say, shorten it, because whatever content is in it, I'm assuming is necessary, but I feel maybe like it needs to be kind of talked about more, referred to, like, from persons who are maybe at a higher level, because I can't lie, in every institution that I've been in, it's just kind of like, it's this book that's, it's talked about, but it's just kind of like probably sitting on some shelf somewhere. It's like, as far as you're aware, something that exists, but not until something like happens, you realize, okay, well, there's this book or this manual that we have to refer to. So I think maybe, I guess if it's utilized more, and I guess, yeah, used and talked about more by persons at a higher level, so that those that are just coming in, I guess they can more so like get into the habit of realizing this is something that we not only use when something occurs, but it's something that we refer to like from a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, correct. It's like you said, we can't minimize the content because a lot of it is very important, content that is needed. What happened with us at Royal Bank, because they insisted, that we, there was a whole, what should I say, a learning online center that they had, and it was through the Harvard Mentor Program. And what they did is they made you do a performance as a part of your goals that you set for the entire year. You would have to say how many of these courses online through the Harvard Mentor Program you would complete. And so persons started to, when review time came around, they were getting um, bad ratings because they didn't complete their Harvard Mentor programs. And so there was a lot of backlash and complaints from the staff that, hey, the bank is very busy all day long. When do we actually have time? And so what they did is they allotted, I think, 2 to 3 hours per week, where each employee had downtime and they were able to spend time on Harvard Mentor intranet to complete these various courses. And so I think too, if we implement these programs, but we don't give the time to go along with, for the persons to study or participate in completing the program, I think that's where there's a big loophole or a gap that needs to be filled. And so again, I guess everybody is overworked and underpaid, but if we are serious about, ethics and values and goals and, about policy and procedure, and, we say gone are the days when you can just operate by judgment or by how you were trained and not verify whether you were trained properly or you are doing what you ought to do and it's in accordance with the law. Companies have to now allot some time. A lot of companies pay school fees, and when it's time for exams, they don't give any study days. And so a lot of times the institute has had to go out to companies where the staff have complained and said, you paid my school fee in full, but you would not even allow me 2 days to study, so creating that awareness and, speaking to HR and saying, listen, you only gave them half of the benefit, they need the other half. So, most of the companies that we've spoken to, they've been receptive. And as we go through the behavioral compliance chapter, you'll find that they talk about speaking up, And that's very, very important. Now, I know, of course, the backlash of speaking up is victimization, and some persons have lost their job, and persons are very afraid to speak up. And a lot of persons feel that what they say, just falling on deaf ears. So hopefully some of what we learned today, of course, we are the future leaders, and when we get in these positions, we will make these decisions, or we will start to have the conversation. So by the time we become the leader of the company, or influential executive within the company, we would, make the right changes, or fight for, some of the things that need to be fixed within our organizations. Okay. And anybody else wants to add? Anybody
think
else wants
also-
to comment?
I
Go
think
ahead.
also too, Ms.
Morning.
Bullard. Morning. I think also too, Ms. Bullard, that the insurances that companies pay for, I don't know how other companies are, but most of those just pay for dental and vision and just medical, but nobody actually pays for any type of therapy or psychological assistance. And believe it or not, in order for people to focus on their jobs properly, I mean, never mind honesty or dishonesty, for persons to properly focus on their job, people have things going on in their lives, and they need assistance. Sometimes you need, therapy or that type of thing to talk out your troubles, or even the persons who end up being dishonest because of financial difficulties in the home, or divorce that they cannot afford. They end up being dishonest as well. That's one of the big things that they discuss about dishonesty in the workplace. Persons that are typically honest, and even long-term employees, they say the frauds happen, with long-term employees, persons that have been there 10 years, been long, but because of personal circumstances, they they do certain things. So I think also too, in the workplace, I think outside of just physical, mental well-being, institutions need to look into assisting with the cost of emotional well-being and that type of thing.
Agree. Yeah, and the Canadian banks are good at that, with, I know for sure, Scotia and Royal Bank, they have like a 1-800 mental health line. And I've used it before, because I've had some trauma. Life happens, and periodically throughout your life, help is there, and a lot of people frown on mental health, but what is important is, if you need help, go and get it. And so whilst I was at Royal Bank, there's a 1-800 number, and you call the 1-800 number, and somebody in Canada, for confidentiality purposes, they
Yes.
answer, and then you explain to them what's happening with you, and they offer you sessions, and until they can find somebody locally for you to speak to. And so I think the first 4 sessions are free, and then a part of our insurance kicked in and paid 75%, because not my entire family was traumatized by murder. And so I went, and then my children went. And so yeah, and Royal Bank supported us through that, like 100%. And so that was a very good program. When I did an audit at Scotia, I saw that they also had that employee wellness program as well. But what you could do in your institutions, if your institution doesn't have a program of such, national insurance requires, I think, wherever there are 6 or more employees, that each institution must have a health and wellness committee. Are we aware of that?
No.
No, I wasn't.
No, I wasn't.
Okay, yeah, so that's what the law states. If you have 6 or more permanent employees, you must establish a health and wellness committee. And so that health and wellness committee, they ensure like the business continuity plan is up to date, like how it's a pandemic now, and it costs a lot of money to buy these disinfectant sprays, ensuring that in America, they had said that the workplace must provide masks and stuff like that. And by now, if you don't have a cloth mask, these masks are now very expensive. I pay like almost $20-something for a big pack of masks, because every day I lost my mask. So this health and wellness committee, they would deal with stuff like that to ensure that, these institutions do what they ought to do. And it's just a group of persons throughout the organization. And the committee should meet at least once per month and ensure that anything in terms of health and wellness is dealt with. And so one particular institution, I also worked at a Swiss bank where they did not have the the insurance with the 1-800 number and the mental health line, but they did have that health and wellness committee, and that committee enforced, that company to source, because they had traders, and the traders used to always be under a lot of pressure. They used to be outside smoking. They smoked like 100 packs of cigarettes a day, and they were always edgy and always drinking like this CBD tea and stuff. And so they were very concerned about them. And so the Health and Wellness Committee put forth to the board that perhaps, we should seek out counseling or, have somebody come in, and we had a health and wellness seminar, and then they did offer counseling, and then they did retain that person in the event somebody, needed some help. And so, like I said, outside, if your company does not have an established 1-800 hotline or anything for mental health, your health and wellness committee. And if you don't have that health and wellness committee, like I said, it's the law to under the NIB Act requires you to have that committee on staff, and mental health should definitely be on the agenda. Okay, so in your institution, find out if you have such a committee, and if not, you could step forward and get it established, okay? Because it'll be for the benefit of all the staff, okay? And they bring forward issues, because they really act like lobbyists. And of course, if, companies, most of the time, they look at the bottom line. And so they need a little nudge and a little push when it comes to, spending money on things that, are needed. Okay, and so that's what that committee should do. Okay, so hopefully some of you will chair it and get it established with wherever, within your institution. And of course, go and Google it through the National Insurance Act, so you could see exactly what it says. And there's a lot of guidance online on how to establish it and what types of things should be on the agenda. Okay, does anybody have a health and wellness committee? Or is it called safety and wellness, or anybody at the institution? No? No. Okay. Okay. All right. So, but now you know about it. And so all of us are governed by the National Insurance Act. And so we should seek out who would speak to IHR about establishing it. Okay. Okay, good. Very good. Okay, let's see what time is it now. We have a few more persons here. It's 9:40. Okay, so very good. So we were just having a discussion to give persons some time to get into the class. We talked about the chapters that we are going to cover, which are 4, 5, and 6. I just want to make sure that we are all on the same page, because I think the initial schedule that went out may have some other information, but just to ensure that we know what we're covering, we're going to cover module 2, and it's going to be understanding, unit 4, understanding behavioral compliance, unit 5, using corporate governance for the benefit of the firm, and unit 6, achieving effective corporate governance. Okay. I also want to point out, I think the schedule would have said that the paper would have been due in February. However, that is not the case. It is question 2, and it is due on March the 7th, 2022. Are we all on the same track? Do we have that information?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, good. So make sure that we all know what we are supposed to be doing. And so the next 3 chapters are about 90 pages. And so each class we will cover about 10 pages and then no, about 21 pages, and then I think it's on the 29th, we will go through the paper and ensure that we have sufficient information. So I trust that most of you would have had the opportunity to look at the questions so far. There are 4 questions. In my review, I started off with question 4 because I want everybody to be prepared for it. And so as I went through question 4, I see question 4 within itself has 8 questions that need to be answered. Okay, and so before, I want it to be interactive when we speak on the 29th. So please, if you have not looked at the question papers yet, please print it out, have a read through it. And I would like persons to come prepared, to have a discussion on how we are to answer these questions. I'd like it to be interactive and, everybody give a contribution. And so there are 8 questions. And so please ensure that you are able to point out those 8 questions within chapter 4. Okay. Has anybody looked at it yet and seen the various parts into question 4? And even though it's a long question, at the bottom is where the 8 questions are. Have we had the opportunity to look at that as yet?
Not in detail, not yet.
Yes, but not in detail. I did look at it.
Okay. Okay, so you have some time. We have about 2 weeks. So for the 24th, I'd like you to do some research and be able to come prepared to discuss that. Okay? Okay, good. And so we are good with all our dates. Everybody knows the 7th is the question. And we are good with 4, 5, and 6. Correct?
Correct.
Good. Okay, good. Y'all have to talk back to Miss Bullis now. This have to be discussion based, because we want to ensure that we have understanding, that not only that we understand, but we can relay this in our papers and relay what we learn in our institutions, okay? Because a lot of time we just talk, and this is why I hate meetings, because we sit down and we talk and then nothing ever happens after we talk. And so we want to stop that. We want to have lively and provocative discussions, and then we want to put some action behind what we say. Okay? And so in chapter 4, 5, and 6, chapter 4 had an introduction that talked about corporate governance and ensuring that it's sustainable and essential, and that it's everybody's business now. For what's common, and we always hear everybody talk about, is compliance being everybody's business. But now they're saying that corporate governance is everybody's business. And I just wonder if that's being disseminated throughout institutions from senior management, because we, again, like I said, with the risk-based approach, we are moving from rules-based to risk-based. So there has been a lot of changes. And so there's no one-size-fits-all approach to compliance anymore. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to corporate governance. There are guidelines that we can follow. However, we must tailor what we do to our institution and make it relevant. And so back in the day, of course, corporate governance was left to the executive team. You had to be at a certain level to even mention it or be concerned about it. Now they're saying that it's everybody's business. Is information being disseminated throughout organizations about corporate governance? Are they including entry-level staff in these discussions? Or are we still stuck in the ages where the goals and the values have been set? They've been set from 1960 and we still following those same goals. We haven't updated, we haven't gotten any feedback from the staff. We're not sharing the risk appetite. Staff still, just do what they are told rather than, follow correct procedure. What is the atmosphere now in the institutions? Are we involved in corporate governance at all? Is it everybody's business? Or it's a work in progress? Anybody? Ochi?
No, we're not involved in it.
Okay,
Hi.
Ochi,
Good morning.
can you hear us? Morning. Hi. So in your institution, are you involved to any aspect? We hearing the tone from the top that it's everybody's business, or are we not there yet?
I don't believe that we're there yet. I think it's still at the top. Well, from my personal experience, I believe that it's still at the top.
Hello.
Okay.
I've said the same thing. I don't know if you could hear me.
Okay, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
I was saying that we're not involved. It's still from the top as well.
Okay, okay. So again, institutions, like I said, institutions have to move towards disseminating information because of course it seems like there's one set of rules for senior management and then another set of rules for the rest of us. Okay, and so the book is now suggesting that everybody should be involved, that those strategic goals that are set, if they were around from the 1920s, that they need to be revamped and reviewed. In fact, it goes further to say, do we even know? I think me and Maria started off talking about the employee handbook and nobody really reads it. Does anybody even know their vision or their mission statement? Do we refer to the handbook other than when we will know how many vacation days we have or how many sick leave days we have? Are we aware of it? And some of us who have been in the institution for 5+ years, do we know?
No.
Delisa, does your company have a mission statement or values or goals?
This is something that we've had a lot of query within our organization for a long time. It's a fairly new organization, and so a lot of things have not been implemented to, I guess, the level that it should be. And so we would like a guideline on what is expected, but some things are just not set up the way that it should be at this point. So we have a lot of, I guess, little issues on the governance side because we're not really sure what, how things should be set up, I guess.
Okay, and do you believe that it's important to have a vision or a mission or goals?
It definitely is, but I also feel that from the executive level, they want to maintain some aspect of privacy, and so it comes off really as if they're keeping staff out of the loop of the governance aspect. But it's definitely important for staff to know.
Okay,
I
and
was just gonna
especially
say-
if,
Sorry.
go ahead.
I was just going to say what Delisa said. I find, I don't know if I've been out of banking for 10 years, but I find that there is a separation. It's a treatment of separation between the executives and the other staff, or executives and senior management and the staff. It's almost as if we include you, then you're going to expect to be or get an attitude of being a part of us. And then you're going to have greater expectations of us and greater expectations of yourself and how you should be treated. I think in some institutions, the separation is intentional. They almost sometimes, I think executives almost think that, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but like, who are you? Like you
You're
are
right, it's
simply
us and then
just,
Yes, I said it's them.
Agreed.
Yeah, and then you are just a worker. I don't know if I don't know if that's a Bahamian thing, or if maybe it's not just a Bahamian thing, because I found that at when I worked my last job, when I worked for a US company, I found it with them, but I don't know if they were like that because of the tone that was set by the Bahamian persons that were affiliated with HR. But there is definitely a separation, and you don't need to
Yeah.
feel like you are one of us. We need you to work, okay? Get it right.
Right. And I agree. And I don't think it's a Bahamian thing. I think it's across many organizations where, we are still stuck in the 80s, where instead of being a coach and a mentor and a trainer, we rule with an iron fist. I's the boss. You do what I say, right? I in charge. And so there's that intimidation. And so again, to make all of these changes and to support this risk-based approach, our behaviors need to be changed and more in line. So persons have to be involved. We need to know what the risk appetite of the company is. That cannot be a secret. We need to know if we're going to do business with Iran or Cuba or Russia. And if we don't, we need to know why. Okay? We need to know if we have an appetite for PEPs. Right? And so these things can no longer be secret. And remember, a lot of, we were a tax haven, and we had all these confidentiality and secrecy laws. They are all now done away with. We now have to, move away now from that culture to be open, to share information. And I think we can do it because in the beginning, remember now, compliance was just born in 2000. And for a very long time, it was a compliance officer, everybody was in fear. The compliance officer, everybody thought they would go to jail, or, if they weren't compliant. And so now we've moved, we have grown over the 21 years into maturity, I guess, Maria. And now we see that, compliance is everybody's business. And I think now everybody's showing up to work knowing that compliance is everybody's business and knowing what their role is in the fight against money laundering. Correct? Are we there? Are we there or no? Dimitri, you go to work and you know anti-money laundering, you know what is required of you, you know that it's a partnership and not just the responsibility of the compliance department.
Yes, but I don't think it's a part of the culture, the overall culture, but it's there, but it's not where it could be.
Okay, so a little bit more embedding, a little bit more work needs to be done for everybody to feel included.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah, okay. So hopefully the same way with corporate governance, that people are involved, that the vision, the mission statement, and the goals are established, first of all, because we have some institutions that don't have it established, like Delisa said, and then not only established, but then disseminated throughout the institution. Again, a good way of disseminating that, through trainings. I have one institution that has a weekly huddle, and before the weekly huddle starts, they say what their vision is, and then they have some values and they repeat the values, and then they call on one staff member to talk about what they did to implement the value in the prior week. And I think that creates awareness. Again, they put the vision and the mission statement up in the common areas that where the staff can see, and everybody is aware of it. And then they have monthly trivias on different parts of it. And so it's practice. And I think that is very important. And it makes everybody feel like, they are part. of the organization, and they are engaged, because a lot of persons show up with their own agenda. And what else do you do when you don't know what our common goal is, when we are not working towards, one common goal, or we are not following values? Okay.
I think it's reiterated, like when the staff is being reprimanded for, I guess, not following the vision and values. That's what I've been seeing. It's not like, I think it's good to do the trivias and do the weekly huddles and get the staff involved. And so there's not really a way where the staff can say, well, I'm not aware that that's what our vision and values is, but where I worked, it was not like that. It's only when you were, I guess, being reprimanded that they sit down, talk to you, and say, this is what our vision and values and goals of the company is. This is what our standards are, and this is what the guidelines you should be following, and stuff like that.
Right. And I agree. That's very reactive. That means when you do something wrong, that's when we talk about it. No, you should be proactive. And again, like I said, it should be shared, at least I guess quoted once a week or once a month. And it should be, embedded within the culture or in every training that happens across the institution. So like you said, persons could not say, I did not know, or I was unaware. Okay, and so you want to ensure that it's established and it's disseminated and then it's discussed. What does it mean if we want to, like Royal Bank, I don't know if it's changed now, but used to be earning the right to be the customer's first choice, right? Then we had to explain, what have we done this week to earn the right to be the customer's first choice? And this was documented. And then at the end of the quarter, we reminded, and we celebrated. And so we use it as a tool to reward, our staff members and say, okay, very good. You went above and beyond. You are living with the motto says it's not just a basis statement. And again, like I said, I think we would have discussed or by now, everybody should be aware of the Enron case with Martha Stewart. And one of the things coming out, and I think I said this before, about their mission and values and their goals, was that most value statements were bland, they were toothless, they were just plain dishonest, and far from being harmless, or as some executives assume, that they are highly destructive. Empty value statements create cynical and dispirited employees, alienate customers, and undermine managerial credibility. Okay, and that's what came out of the Enron case. After, when Martha Stewart would have gone to jail, they did a full investigation and they wanted to find out exactly, where did the company go wrong and what happened. And that was one of the investigators, what he came up with, that, while, because like Delisa said, their one isn't established. But when it is established, we have many companies that have them there, and they say them, nobody else knows them. It's not disseminated. Staff are not aware. And if you are not aware, you definitely live in it. So are these statements really, do they hold any value? Okay, and like I said, Royal Bank, we could talk about Royal Bank, because it's happening now, and this was one of the questions that we put forth to them when they discontinued the $20 note, when they discontinued the interest, when they started charging $16 for the national insurance check, when they hold national insurance account. Are you truly earning the right to be the customer's first choice? Did you have a dialogue with the customer and ask how would the $20, the stopping of the $20 affect the customers? Did anybody go to a town hall meeting or a forum? Was it discussed? Any Royal Bank persons in here? No? Okay, but do you get my drift? Do you see now that because there have been uproar, because so many persons complained, they have now reestablished the $20. Now, they haven't done anything with the interest. I don't know if that's beyond their control. And they haven't done anything, but the fees have been a problem for a very long time. But national insurance, if you get a national insurance check, it's because you have some illness or sick, or you may have lost a family member. The national insurance check is drawn on Royal Bank. If you go and say, I don't have an account anywhere else, and there are a portion of the country that is unbanked, this person already getting only 33% of their salary. They now have to take $16 out of could possibly be a $40 check. Okay, are you truly earning the right to be a customer's first choice? Any comments? Are they earning the right by not letting you withdraw your last $40?
Royal Bank, I
the
don't
last
believe that they're earning the right. It's almost as if they don't want to be in this part of the world anymore. And they definitely took a reactive approach with the $20 note. Like you said, it's not until there was an uproar that they reinstated it. And I think they had released a statement saying that they looked at the habits of Bahamians and their withdrawal from the ATMs. And they found that that was not a highly withdrawn sum. So I don't know if they just made their decision based on that, or if it would have caused higher fees on their part or what, but they took a stance after the uproar.
Correct. And again, who is holding their feet to the fire? I know when audit comes in, audit, has an audit plan, and let's say if there are 100 functions within an institution, audit can only check about 30 each time they come in. And so they are on like a rotational basis. They don't check every single function within an institution. But I am wondering, because I've audited for a while, and I've never seen, is anybody checking stuff like goodwill and values and goals? Are they auditing those aspects to ensure that persons are actually following what their mission statement says? Are the regulators checking? Because again, if we don't, we are human beings, and if we are not regulated, if we have one aspect where we could stand up and sound good, or we need to have values and goals and a vision statement just to say that we are established, how do we stop these companies from making these toothless and baseless statements that nobody knows and nobody acts out every day? What do we do?
Agreed. Well, from a regulatory or audit perspective, they're definitely not checking to see whether these things are being demonstrated or whether the employees are even aware of what they are. But in terms of the policy that the institution has put in place, where it mentions how they are going to disseminate these values, or how they're going to provide training yearly, etc., they'll only ask for evidence to show that the organization has actually done the mandatory training, that they are regularly communicating it, but they're not checking to see if the individual employees are actually aware of it.
Okay, and so I guess that
yeah.
needs to be added to the audit plan, internally as well as externally, because we will run into, like I said, cases where, like I say, perhaps persons in here, I mean, I don't know how long you would have been with your institution, and like Delisa said, they are waiting for theirs to be established. But for the companies that have been established, do we know our vision and goals? Do we know them? Or is it like what Ochi is saying, it comes up if we do something wrong? It comes up when it's time to get in trouble. And if we don't know it, or if it's not being disseminated properly, are we speaking up? Or are we just so afraid?
Good morning. Can
Morning.
you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I was trying to get in for a little bit. With my company, well, we're a hospitality casino, so our rules and procedures are strictly adhered to and are strictly regulated. I think my company does a very good job with enforcing our mission statements, our values, our goals. I wanted to get back to when I came in, I joined in late, and one of the things I think I understood you were asking was, how can we improve the integrity and ethics of our employees? And one of the things, and I noticed that we've been doing in surveillance, we've been putting together footages of errors by past employees. So when an example would be the cage where money has been dealt with, we would show in those footages errors that former employees would have committed. And it helps the employees that are there. I mean, it may be funny to them when they're looking at it, and they can't believe that that person actually did this particular thing, but it brings awareness to why policies and procedures are put in place. So I think my company does a very good job, I must say, with the rules. Governance is everybody's business. We are mandated by the FIU to have so much training and annually, and we are graded, and if we don't pass a 70, I believe, we'll have to take the class over, and if we fail 3 times, we are no longer employed. And so therefore, I think we do a very good job. I must say that about our company, but there is, I feel, a difference where executive, there is, like you were saying earlier, you can see the difference between the executives and the employees. I do see that in a negative aspect, but as far as bringing governance and everything together to make the employees aware, I think we do a very good job with that.
Okay, good. Excellent. Very good. And it's refreshing to hear that, some companies are doing what they ought to do. For the most part, like you said, create awareness training, because a lot of times staff just did not know, or they, weren't aware of risk associated with various functions throughout the organization. So it's very good that you have that training, okay? And like I said, the most important thing is to ensure that everybody is aware, everybody understands. I guess we need to make sure that the training are relevant and they are current and they are up to date. That it's user friendly. A lot of persons are doing things online. We want to ensure that persons know how to use systems and know with risk associated with every system that they use. And we want to ensure that the culture of the organization is that, we do follow policy and procedure. We do implement reading time. So persons are familiar with how to do things properly rather than just using judgment. I think a lot of companies do not act ethically because we are constantly, like I said, short staff. We are constantly overworked and underpaid. And so we have to get to the point where companies, operate efficiently. And it's just not the norm that persons are, swamped, especially during the pandemic. I know one particular hotel, only called back half of the staff. And the persons that went back to work, were basically told, listen, yeah, 3 people used to do this job. We had to cut back, or we've only bringing back half of the staff, and so you must be happy now that you have this job. And so those persons that went back to work were swamped, right? And I think that happened in a lot of institutions where persons found it unbearable right after the pandemic because only half of the workforce were let back in. Has that simmered down now? Has anybody else experienced that, or was that only in some institutions in regards to the pandemic?
That happened within the hospitality area.
Or nobody has heard, Annie? You've heard of that?
Yes, it has happened. It is true, and it causes a problem. It creates a lot of errors. From my position, watching errors, it creates a lot of errors, and people are overworked and dealing with cash. It really, honestly, we had a problem. Honestly, we really had a problem. So yeah, I experienced it, and it's wrong. That was really not a good thing for the institution. Financially, it wasn't a good thing for employees. So yeah, we experienced it.
Okay.
And many institutions in the hospitality industry experienced it.
Okay. And so it seems like when we talk about ethics, it's geared to more, or ethical behavior is geared more to the staff, or the focus more is on the staff, not creating frauds, doing what they are supposed to do. That's where the focus is. However, are these companies being held accountable when they don't make ethical decisions, when they bring half of the staff back to work? Like, for instance, Finco, a while back when they made a change, they had 129 employees, they let 100 go. So that means 29 employees carried out the functions of Finco. And do we not see how the end result of that with Royal Bank and their level of service just went, I completely south? Okay, because I worked at Royal Bank for 16 years. And so, and I felt that at a certain point we had our service levels very, high, and we was earning the right to be the customer's first choice. And we were concerned when the line was long and our tellers did not work their lunch hour, and we ensured that that line kept moving back in my day. And then and I didn't try to toot my own horn and saying, yeah, that's what we did, but that really, I was the customer service supervisor, and so I had to ensure that my line kept moving, and even I took on cash and went on the teller lineup to ensure that that line kept moving. Okay, then Royal Bank sold out to Trinidad, and their culture is completely different from ours. Their level of customer service, their focus, kind of changed everything, and that's when they let the 100 persons go and left 29 persons to man Finco and saying we are outsourcing the service. Do we now see how that has drastically affected the reputation of Royal Bank from then to now? Did anybody else believe that the service was good back then, or everybody feels that the service was always bad? Anybody?
I only remember it being bad.
Y'all don't remember back in Miss Bullet Day? Y'all wasn't born
Oh.
anything back. Hey, BC,
Well,
y'all don't remember that.
I think I was.
I wasn't old enough to bank then, but I do remember going to RBC to pay my school fees, and the lines were, I used to go to that same RBC in the plaza with Lowe's Pharmacy in Palmdale. And even though it'd be like school fee time, my mom would send me on the line. It would take like maybe 10, 15 minutes while she's in Shane's or Lorraine's getting other things, and I would walk back across. But now that same line takes like an hour to get inside the door. So it's definitely a big change.
Yeah. Okay. And again, all in the name of outsourcing, creating efficiencies, and them having a better way and reducing costs and all of that. And again, the net effect is you suffer grave reputational risk. So were those decisions the best decisions to be made? I don't think so. Did they really save?
Ms.
Because I
Bullard,
would think that
question.
they would have lost.
I know we had a discussion in our first module for this. We spoke about, what was it? We spoke about basically how we needed regulation for customer service standards and that type of thing. But I'm wondering, does the central bank step in at some point and speak to, I mean, the central bank, I mean, the FATF always brags about the central bank, and they seem to be overall pleased from all of their comments and their mutual evaluations. But why does the central bank have such a hands-off approach with things like this?
Again, because there is no awareness training. These things aren't important. Again, just like they are, just like we are overwhelmed and underpaid. Let's think about our central bank. When all these laws changed in 2018, they didn't have the analytics department. That's just growing, and they just hiring, and people are just, you know what I mean? They are still on a learning curve. And so again, we are a very reactive nation. Something has to happen first. Enron has to happen in the Bahamas for us to, take these things seriously. And so one or two small things have happened. And so, like I say, when it comes to audit, they probably have 100 functions to check, and they rotate them. There are about 5 to 10 functions that each time they audit, they have to check. And of course, that's centered around, cash and money and stuff like that. And so that's where the focus is. But while the FATF and the OECD, and you say they talk about it, I read an article from, what do you call those award winners? Not Guinness World Record writers. He won the Nobel Peace Prize winner, wrote an article a few years ago about when it was the credit crisis, and his article said, where were the regulators? How did they allow this to fail? Right? And so, because like I say, the FATF and the OECD, the international regulators, they work closely. Like they say, nobody will say their fish smell bad, or their fish stink, right? And so, of course, when you read those articles, you will see that's international regulators slamming local regulators. So they're not going to do that because they have some responsibility as well. Why did you allow this to happen? Where were you? And so from that Nobel Peace Prize winner, I can't remember his name, he talked about it. Where were the regulators? How did they allow this to happen? Why didn't they step in? And again, you would see very reactive. After the credit crisis, then they implemented the Basel III and the capital adequacy, policies and procedures and stuff like that. But again, reactive. Okay, so do a little bit more research, and you will see where, like the Nobel Peace Prize winners or other persons that write, you would see where they talk about these are the mistakes that the regulators made, or these are the checks and balances. Like, how many times does this happen before they implement a procedure, or when they go and audit this? It's mandatory that they do these checks. But like I said, again, they are on a learning curve. They want to say corporate governance is everybody's business, and then we are going to grow into that. And so again, you need audit, you need enforcement, be dealing with human beings, you're going to have high, medium, and low. You have a very diverse society, people from all walks of life. These things have to be learned. You have to train them when they come into your organization that this is our code of conduct, this is our handbook. And so, like I said, for the most part, institutions, check the box. They know we need this vision, we know they need this handbook goals, but again, very baseless statements until it is enforced, until somebody checks, until somebody says that no, Royal Bank, you did not earn the right to be the client's first choice, and we will fine you $1 million, then you would see before they go and turn off a $20 or turn off the interest or charge somebody $16 on a national insurance check, then they'll make a difference. But until then, it's free reign. They do as they feel because there's no consequence. You know, and they've gotten away with it before. But because there was so much outcry, because they talked about it in the House of Assembly, because so many staff members said, how was this decision made? Then, you know, they tried to fix one out of 3 very wrong things that they did against the customer. Okay, and then the book talks about treating customers fairly initiative in the UK. We have the Consumer Protection Bureau. Complaints could be made to the regulator. But my God, I had a problem with Kalina. It's on a horrendous process that I went through with Kalina. I sent them an email with what my issue was, and then they sent me these forms I had to fill out. After I filled out the form, then they asked me to fill out another form. Then they took 4 months. So I called the insurance commission. The insurance commission sent me like 5 forms to fill out. It was just a ridiculous process, you know? And so all of that deters, you know, the person making the complaint. I talked to 10 people and fill out 20 forms and nobody still hear my complaint. It's ludicrous. And so until they formulate that properly, you know, these companies, if there's no consequence, these companies do what they want. Okay, and when you look at the consumer protection site, they talk about rent control and price control, and we all see what happens with price control when a hurricane comes, water and plywood and grocery is out the window, and then you have the price control person comes on TV and say, I'm at the super value, these prices are out of control, they are going to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Then we don't hear nothing else afterwards. Correct? Do we hear anything after the hurricane pass?
Nope.
No.
No, right? So that's where we're at. And so while there is an informal process where you can report these financial services institutions to their regulator, the central bank has been establishing the office of the ombudsman, and that office is to ensure that there are fairness, to ensure that companies do what they ought to do in the name of customer service, and to ensure that the client leaves satisfied. And so I don't know why this has been being established from 2017 and this office has not been established yet, but hopefully, you know, they get it up and running. Again, Royal Bank has its own ombudsman. It's out of Canada. If you are, you have a problem or any issue, and I think I told you all, I always have an insurance, but did I tell you all the story about my insurance? Whilst I was at Royal Bank? You're still
No.
there, or you're asleep, you're
No.
awake, you're there?
No,
You didn't tell us.
Hello?
No, you didn't tell us.
no, you didn't tell us.
Okay, okay. You all sound so interested. You're you know, you're just beating it out of me. But anyway, Royal Bank has in most Canadian banks, they have the internal ombudsman where you can make a complaint. And what happened, I think, very early in my employment with Royal Bank, I had been there, I think, 5 years before I had my second child. And when I went to have my baby, I was told that I had no insurance and my premium was coming out of my salary each, you know, every time we got paid. And so when I went in, I said, but my premium has come out for 5 years. That means me, my husband, or my first child, we have no insurance at all. And they say, yeah, basically, but we will establish it now. And if you write a letter, we'll ask the insurance to cover you for your pregnancy. I was like, ask after I pay all these years. And so they, they were very nonchalant about it. And in my first visits to the doctor, I had to pay myself, and then I went to them, I said, but this is why I paid insurance. I should have been covered. I didn't got 100% for delivery or what have you. And I said, the hospital is asking me for a down payment. And they was like, oh, just pay the down payment, or we could give you a loan or whatever. And I was like, but this is why I have insurance. But nevertheless, I went through the pregnancy, had to find my own money to pay whilst Royal Bank gets it sorted out. And so after I had my baby and I got back to work, I said, well, do I not get my money back that I paid for 5 years? And it was like, oh, no, don't worry about that, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, but I was paying like $180 and I didn't have any coverage. And so they was like, well, don't worry about that. And they don't have any records of that. And that'll take them so long to prove. And I was like, but you'll have to go and look for some records, and I could bring you on my pay slips. And, they were just brushing me off, and they weren't really interested in what I had to say. And so, and this, again, is the head of HR. So, I kept calling, and it went on for the entire year. And I went to the CEO, and the CEO said, listen, call the ombudsman for them. And I said, the ombudsman, who's the ombudsman? He said, the person in Canada, they'll get it sorted out. And so I called the 1-800 number, spoke to the ombudsman, and that HR lady, they made her go into the archives, pull out, and they gave her 2 weeks. They told her within 2 weeks, she must have all my money back, that what I paid for my insurance, and they even sent me some flowers for the inconvenience. Now, she gave me the evil eye every time she saw me for the next 2 years, but that's how the ombudsman works. It ensures that if you have a valid complaint, that whomever it is, no matter what level they are at, it's enforced. And of course, because she was the head of HR, she felt like, she could just brush me off and tell me not to worry about my money, but that didn't work that way. Okay. So like I said, that's what the central bank is now establishing. While you can call the regulator and make a complaint, most customers do call the regulator and make a complaint, and complaints are with the compliance department. And so if normally the compliance doesn't directly receive the complaint, but you should have a complaint policy that says, if a customer makes a complaint, we will respond within like 48 hours. And the regulator have come in and they said, Ms. Bullard, I'd like to see a book of complaints for 2018. We are checking to see where you would have responded within the 48 hours. And then we are checking to see what your resolve is. So I am wondering what's happening with the insurance commission, because my complaint should still be outstanding and they should have been audited by now. And somebody should have called me, but nobody called me. But what I'm saying is, as compliance, you hold all the complaints, you make sure that they respond within the 48 hours, and just an acknowledgement saying that we've received that complaint, and then you ensure that the person gets some type of recourse, or the company makes a decision, and hopefully the company, the person is satisfied. If the person is not, then they have the right, they can go to the regulator. But what I'm saying is, ensure that you have proper records, because complaints normally rest with compliance. And there's an annual AML return each year that has to be completed, where they ask you the number of complaints, and they want source document to make sure that it was handled properly and the customers are satisfied. Okay. Any questions so far? Because you're making me feel like you're falling asleep now. Ivania, you up? You there?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here. I just got rid of my son, so I can talk now.
I can't hear you.
I'm here. I just got rid of my son, so I can talk now. The Paw Patrol and everything is off. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So go ahead. Give me some feedback.
Well, from what I was listening, I know what with Scotia now, I know they're trying to do this whole digital thing, and we're getting a lot of complaints, the lines are longer now with the customers. So I think that was when you guys were talking about RBC and the changes that were made. They've recently expanded, because I'm a teller, they have expanded our roles now. So we're now keying sales as well. So it's way more expected of you. And like you said, we're still short staff, no pay raise. And it's a lot going on, and the pressure coming down on us is a lot more. But they tell you, I've actually had someone in management tell me, we just have to try and make the best of what we have and be grateful that we have a job. So it's just trying to navigate through all of this right now. And I mean, yeah.
So do you all have the health and wellness committee?
Yes, ma'am. I think we get like 6 sessions a year. I'm
Okay,
not
and so
sure.
nobody is, so everybody, because the world is in a pandemic, nobody's speaking up, and if you do speak up, you complaining rather than you having a legitimate, complaint.
Well, I do speak up, and it is even when I've had sessions with HR, but they tell you, because we don't take lunch in the branch. Our main branch downtown, we don't take lunch. And our supervisor tells us, okay, well, sometimes once we're done at 3:30, we can leave. But I know I manage the cage with the ATMs, and even though we're cashless, I still have to wait on the bins. So sometimes I don't get to leave until 4 or 5. And I've been complaining about it. Your overtime has to be approved by the retail director. If it's not approved, you don't get compensated, you don't get time back. And I've been complaining, and they've only told us that we basically be grateful that you have a job.
Wow. Wow. And I'm wondering, because like I said, even outside of the pandemic, some companies were operating like this. I'm wondering what's going to have to happen in order for people to wake up and make some changes. And you just mentioned that you worked at Scotia in the main branch, and I know there was a big ad in the paper a few months ago, or a few years ago, I would say, where that same branch was having renovations done, and all sorts of stuff happened, and then they let the manager go because he made so many complaints, but he was able to sue them, and then he won.
I think Mr.
Do you recall that story?
Darren Bow, I think.
Yeah, so somebody like that. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
all
he
over
still
the
comes
news.
into the
And so,
branches.
right. And so it seems as if, not even though they've already been sued and they've been through something similar,
Nothing
what
has
does it
changed.
take? What
I
does
know
it take to,
one of the customers was saying we need to band together and go to the labor board, because I know they say the labor, well, for like our hours wise, the labor board is really strict on those things. But honestly, I don't know.
yeah. Well, again, this is why we're here. We are the future leaders. One day we will be making these decisions. And so at least we get to see the two sides. And I know, because I was a part of executive management, and I know that there are always budgets and time constraints. But if there's somebody speaking up at the executive level that pushes for persons, your most valuable asset is your staff. And if your staff okay, and if they happy, more than likely they will give good service, and your customers will be pleased, and then that will affect your bottom line. But people don't seem to get the gist of that. As human beings, we just don't. Again, we know the corporate culture within in corporate Bahamas is atrocious, and we just don't know how to treat people, and we don't know what to say. And we think that 5 minutes can make a difference, you know what I mean? But some people do take advantage, but for the most part, you should have some type of solution and system in place to help the people to make sure that, hey, this my good employee. If this person don't have to worry about picking up children from school or working all these extra hours and feeling beat down, then they will be more productive. But people don't ever seem to get that gist. And then in terms of job security, everybody, nobody wants to educate themselves or keep themselves current. And so job security is, let me find the idiot among the group and promote them and let them frustrate all the smart people, And so we have to move away, because it don't make no sense as teaching ethics, talking about it, creating all this awareness, but then still showing up to work and accepting the way things is as the norm. So we really, like I say, we really have to make a difference when we become the future leader. And like I say, not just talk, but fix things. So we will have 8 hours apiece, not go to war every day for 8 hours. Okay. And so again, yes.
I have a question. This is a question somebody can help me with. I've always wondered, right? I heard everything that you've said. As a line staff, moving up and becoming manager and becoming executive. Okay, let's think of that person as a line staff first. As a line staff, you experience all these challenges, and you say, when I become a manager, I'm going to put this in place and that in place, and I'm going to look out for the smaller man because I've been there. I understand what they're going through, right? My thing is, when you become that manager, does something change? Because I find a lot of people forget. Or is it because now that you're a manager, your roles change, so you're thinking different? I'll give you an example. As a dealer, I wanted the patron to win money, so I can make money, I can get tips. But as a surveillance person, I'm now watching how that patron is winning. Is the patron cheating? I'm not even thinking about, oh, it's good for the dealer now because the dealer's gonna make money. I'm thinking my role has changed. I want to know if that patron is card counting, what's going on. So I'm thinking, as a line staff, I'm being treated bad. So when I become a manager, I'm going to look out for that line staff because I can identify. But I don't see that happening. So does something change?
I think compensation is coming from the wrong direction. I don't think compensation should be dependent so strongly on whether somebody is winning in the casino. I think compensation is coming from the wrong direction in the first place. Okay, and you are doing your job. That's what you're supposed to do. At the end of the day, people are in business to make money. People in business to make money. So I think compensation should come from your employer, not whether the person is winning or not. And you are doing your job. You're not supposed to be, oh God, I hope they win so the other person could make some money. No, I disagree with that.
I feel like lately, you just tend to put yourself first. So as humans, we're saying, oh yeah, we're gonna look out for this person and that person. And in this current predicament, I down like everybody else. So when I get to that level, I'll make sure that the things that I had to face that were challenges for me, those things are taken care of. But it's kind of like, well, I'm no longer in that position, so I straight now. So it's almost like something may switch, and you may not be aware of it.
Yeah, and some people don't care. Like I had a manager say, when I was she was a manager in the 80s, right?
Mhm.
This is now 2020, and entry-level staff was getting a promotion, and there was a discussion about salary, and this manager basically said, I said, well, we need to pay at least $40,000. This manager said, when I was a manager at the branch back in 1983, my salary is only $34,000 and I was a manager. This person is only going to a supervisory level. Why should she get paid $40,000? And
Already
that was the
someone you don't
premise
need to
of
be
how
at
her salary
management.
should have.
That's
Yeah,
somebody you don't
okay.
need to have in management.
I said, ma'am, I said, you were a manager in 1983. She wasn't even born yet. I said, you trying to tell me some 20 years later, the salary should not have increased?
She
And she
dumb
was
and she
adamant.
mean. She dumb and she
She was
mean, Miss
adamant,
Bullock.
right? And that's exactly what happens, because I didn't make that. You definitely can't make that. Another manager said, well, she only been there for 2 years and she's a supervisor. I said, guess what? It took me 6 years to get in to a supervisor from entry level. I am so proud that I could see the growth where these persons are coming in entry level, updating themselves, training, and in 2 and 3 years, they can move on to be a supervisor. I was proud. They was mad. Oh, they're getting promoted too fast. Oh, it take me 10 years to be a manager. And so that's what happened. I mean, from my experience.
But
Okay.
also, Miss
I don't
Bullock,
know what you have.
you do know, Miss Bullock, that some people do get treated differently. You do have people who may have the same qualifications, but one thing I've always found in the workplace is not just about how qualified you are, how well you do the job. It's also whether who is in control likes you or not.
Correct.
That's a big deal in the Bahamas.
True.
Correct. And correct. That's all it takes. It
And if
don't
you're too
matter.
vocal, you're not liked. If you're too vocal, you're not liked. If you're an advocate for things, you're not liked. You have to know, boy, like how you say, know your customer, you got to know your boss. You
Right.
just have to know the institution you're working for and the dynamics and how they think and how they are. And then you will know how to maneuver. But usually people don't like vocal persons. So you could be all hardworking and you could be all equipped, all you want. You still have to pass the other test of who likes you or who does not like you.
Who doesn't like, right? And luckily for me, Royal Bank was so big that, I had some people that love me and I had some people that didn't like me at all. And that's why I tend to, when I'm searching for employment, I see these very small boutique banks, I say it makes no sense, because all it takes is that one person not to like you, and that's your career. And so try to, look for the bigger organizations too. When you realize that this relationship isn't working out, then you can, the institution is large enough for you to move somewhere else. Because Maria, you were so correct. If that one person doesn't like you, that's it.
Yeah. And usually it's
that's
a
all it
woman.
takes.
Usually it's a woman. Also too, from all that we've been discussing over the last probably 10 minutes, I've also noted that HR is not as empowered or as independent as they should be, or that we'd like to think they are. They're not. I found that, and I've learned, I should say, that HR are individuals who are trying to keep their job as well. So at the end of the day, they could have all of the standards and all of the fairness and all of the ethics, and they could have their mandate, personal or professional mandate, set out for them. But at the end of the day, whoever's in charge of that place decides what goes on in that place. Okay,
Correct.
HR are individuals who are trying to keep their job just like everybody else.
Correct. And so this is why you stay current. And this is why I always encourage persons to have at least 5 revenue streams. Again, you do not want to be in these positions where, you are compromised, or you compromise yourself because you're trying to save face, or you make the wrong decision because you in a clique. And so you must support these people around you, or you will be victimized. Okay, when it comes to the point, and again, your career is going to change over a course of 30 years. Life changes over a course of 30 years. Like I said, I had some people who love me, then some people who hate me, but luckily I was able to, say, let me job post somewhere else and get away from these people, because I don't fit in here, you know, and learn what I could learn. Sometimes you were on the mountain, sometimes you're in the valley. Okay. And so you just have to be able to identify where you are, but have that revenue stream. And I had my backup revenue stream. So when I felt like my position was being compromised, I said, you know what? I'm not going to do this. You know, I've decided that compliance is independent of this bank. I'm not going to sign. And so I said, I'm going to stay until you let me go, or I will resign, whichever comes first. And you know, I teach on the side, I have another business, I have a few other investments, so that I can make that decision and not worry, but oh, my children in private school, or how my mortgage could pay, or whatever. And so that's what happens. Like you said, Maria, people come into these institutions, they have their foundation, they were taught the right things at home. However, they concern now with the mortgage, they concern with the school fees or the status. And so I agree to let you do this transaction, even though I know it's not ethical. Okay,
And also to
have your
Annie,
backup plan.
also to Annie, with respect to that, sometimes we want to do the right thing when we get in senior positions, like in government. When we get elected, this is what we're gonna do. That is what we're gonna do. But you don't know the full story of a situation until you're in it, and you might have all of the standards and all of the good intentions for the junior staff in a place, but you don't know why it was that you were treated that way when you were junior, and you meet those same things in place. And when you get there, so your hands are tied too. So then you're put in the position where, like HR, you fighting to keep your job just like everybody else. You're not gonna quit because you finally got here, you're finally making this salary. So you ain't putting your job on the line because you want to look out for the junior people who are experiencing exactly the same foolishness that you are experiencing. So at the end of the day, everybody is in survival mode. So it's not that your ethics have changed and who you are has changed, but you have to pick yourself first. And only on a very, typically people don't go to bat for people when they know they're gonna lose at the end of the day. Okay, so only some missionary, you got the missionaries in life, I guess, who believe in good treatment for all and are willing to put themselves on the line for others. But most of the time when you get in these senior positions, you realize exactly how things work and how they're set up. And no, you can't do nothing for these people either.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
And Maria,
I agree, Maria.
what we don't realize, I don't see, again, we weren't taught or told the whole stories, you know. When of course, everybody wants to move up the line, and we set these goals. When I first became a supervisor, all my friends cut me off because it was 8 of us. And they said, oh, okay, they must see like Miss Bullet. So they chose her, and now she was the supervisor over us. And the person I used to drop home every day, bring to work and drop home, she decided she could take the bus now rather than sit in my car, because now I was a supervisor for real. That's what happened. She decided she could take the bus. And then I only got $50 more. $50 more. And then I, of course, used to be a teller who, when the bank closed, I balanced within 30 minutes. That's why they made me the teller supervisor. But here it is now, I stay into work until 8 o'clock because I have to help everybody else balance for $50 more. Okay. And so I had felt that that was the worst decision. I almost asked them to take that back. More work, lose your friends.
I think those are, I like those. I like that because you could stick that on your resume. You just have to have a plan. I think positions look good on resumes, and if the money isn't right, you just do that for a year, stick it on your resume and leave. When on my last job, I was given a 33-room, because I manage houses for Baker's Bay. I manage staff housing, the housing of staff, as well as in some cases, the houses that we rented. And we had about 40 houses. And we had some absentee landlords, people who just have a rental property on a key and they just want the money from it and they don't want to take care of it. And because housing was so scarce on the key, the club, being the rich place that it is, they need to house their staff for convenience on the quay. So we're going to be tackling and managing horrible houses and doing repairs to houses that don't even belong to the club. Nevertheless, I got paid a good salary, but about a year or two into me getting the job, because housing is what I did for the US Embassy as well. And a year or two after me getting the job, they gave me a 33-room housing building that not only housed full-time, like long-term staff, it housed temporary, like long-term staff, and it also had 5, well, it ended up being 7 transient rooms, meaning like a hotel. So you have bookings in and out, in and out, in and out, and you had consultants that would come and they're emailing you 7 days a week and asking you, so-and-so needs to come and do we have any availability? So I started to run a mini hotel. They didn't give me 50 cents more. I went to the HR director who I knew from Commonwealth Bank. She used to work in HR there. And so this woman knows me. She knows my capabilities and all of that. And she asked me how much I was looking for, for inheriting this monstrosity on a quay that did not have, can I add this? Sorry for telling my story. That did not have assigned housekeeping. So I had to source housekeeping on a quay, hustling all about the place, trying to find people to clean the rooms. Did not have an assigned maintenance team. So I had to borrow maintenance from the club, like asking favors and calling people's bosses. Can you send so-and-so to help me? So she asked me how much I wanted for this building. I was familiar with what happens at the building. So I said, well, give me $100 a week to manage the 33-room building. Give me $100 more on my salary. I never got that $100. Okay? Never got the $100 a week, which $100 a week is $5,000 a year to manage a 33-room building that was like you're on a bicycle 24 hours a day trying to manage. Needless to say, the hurricane blew the building away. Okay, so that building was history. Anybody who worked the building hated the building. Like we hated that building because of what it entailed, and I didn't get $1 for it. But you know what? I put it on my resume. Okay.
And it looks good.
It looks good.
It looks good.
That you
yeah.
managed a 33-room. So I can look for a job in the financial sector. I can look at a job in management. I can manage HOAs, that type of thing. But that's how I had to look at that while I was so pissed off.
Yeah. So you got the benefit, you got the experience. So that's good. And it looks good on your resume. So always try to find the positive side in it. There's always a benefit somewhere. Yeah, but that's what happens. And so we feel that getting to the next position is the be all and end all. It isn't. And so don't be surprised when you get there. Not until you perhaps get the executive management, you'll see a difference in salary. Sorry. Oh, I was muted. Sorry. So you don't. What was the last thing that y'all heard? Because I talked about there being so many gray areas in ethics and persons using their judgment. Did y'all hear that?
No, the last thing was
Y'all there?
not until you get into the executive post that you'll see a change in salary.
Yeah. So don't be disappointed. And then even with the hotels, they are with the waiters, they are captains and then waiters. And at the captain level, I think you get a set salary, whereas at the waiter level, you get a tip, which is like the 15% gratuity from each customer that you serve. And so you have the captains making $350, $400 a week, and they are the managers. And then you have the waiters making $700-800 because they're getting that 15%. Same thing with the managers. The managers probably make $550-600, and the staff making 800 to 1,000. So that's why for a very long time you'd see that people do not want to go into management. They don't want that stress. They don't want the dealing with people. Being a people manager is very, very tough. The various attitudes and the personalities that you have to raise above each day. And so you tend to get $5 more for being a people's manager. But in your career, at some point you have to do it. So, I tried to go the back office route, for the most of my career. But when I started off in customer service, yeah, I had all the tellers and the customer service and the compliance people. Yeah, that was horrendous. And so then I went back office, but it was good experience to have. You have to do it at some point in your life. And unless you really can deal with the personalities, and all the stories and the issues that people deal with, then, do it just for the experience and then move on. But the book goes on to say that, ethics, there are so many gray areas. How do you determine, people use their judgment. And so what I was saying is, it's good to know what the code of conduct states and know what the employee handbook states, or in the event your company does not have one, like I said, Bahamas Services Board has a generic one that most companies use and they implement, they source out to their staff. So you could perhaps just read, have a look over it, so you will, have a guideline to follow. It goes on to talk about in the UK, they have regulatory handbooks. Of course, in the Bahamas, we have the Central Bank Anti-Money Laundering Guide, the Securities Commission AML rules. There is code of practices at the Compliance Commission where they briefly speak on ethics, being ethical. They have a code of practice for lawyers, accountants, and real estate brokers that they are to follow. Then there's at the Securities Commission as well as the Central Bank, there are fit and proper tests. And like I stated, there are 3 regulated functions within the institution: the senior official 1, senior official 2, and then the MLRO. And of course, we know the MLRO is a regulated function, and there's a fit and proper test that is carried out, basically a background check on the person to ensure that they are fit and proper for the position. And that's where they ask for your CV, some bank references, some character reference. In fact, just yesterday, somebody was to my door. My neighbor applied to be the MLRO, apparently. And so they came, and an inspector came to ask me if she's a good neighbor. Has there been any instances where I had to call the police for, if I ever saw the police come into our house, so luckily I was, able to be honest about that. And she is a good neighbor. So they are following the fit and proper test from the regulator to approve as the MLRO. And like I said, outside of that, the various code of practices and the Compliance Commission and Securities Commission with the AML rules that touch basically on ethics and who is fit and who is proper. Okay. It goes on to talk about the reputation that a firm holds among its customers and the wider public is key to understanding its sustainability as a business. And again, all my stories are from Royal Bank. Of course, I worked to the trust company. We were very profitable. I was there, I think I was to Royal Bank for 16 years. 8 of those years were at the trust company. And I've worked across the entire, there are 5 entities in Royal Bank. It's commercial, trust, capital markets, Dominion Securities, and it was private banking. And the trust company was very profitable at the time when we shut down, but we was being sued by the French government, and essentially first for tax evasion for one of our customers, but we were able to be acquitted in that case. And then for some artwork that was stolen artwork. And of course, most of you would know how a trust account works. A trust is a legal entity. We got the letter of wishes from the settlor who said that I wish that you accept instructions from Simone Darlin. Simone said, I have some art in France. I'd like you to open up a storage facility for us. And so, of course, as the Royal Bank of Canada, we are now the owners of the trust. We went around in France, we looked for a storage facility, just like the Blake Road storage. And we signed the forms and we opened up the storage facility. Then we called the delivery driver and we had them deliver all the art from the art gallery, and we put it into the storage facility. About a month or so later, we got a subpoena. They wanted to see our contract for the storage facility. It was in the name of the Royal Bank of Canada, even though these paintings belonged to Simone. It was found that these paintings were stolen, and so therefore we were, charged because we were the owners of that storage facility. And of course, like I said, Royal Bank Trust Company was very profitable at the time, but because of the negative media, the reputational risk, there are 4 other entities outside of Royal Bank Trust in the Bahamas. We were constantly in the French news. We were constantly in the Nassau news. We decided that we would close down to avoid the reputational risk whilst the case goes on. And a lot of people still do not know about that case because we shut down, and so it wasn't very interesting any longer. Perhaps in France, they reported in the newspaper every time they go to court, but it wasn't interesting anymore to the media. But whilst we were open almost every day, we were in the media, Royal Bank this, Royal Bank that. And so because of reputational risks, they closed down. Okay, and so that's how serious reputational risk is. We did not want to affect, Royal Bank Commercial or Royal Bank Capital Markets or what have you. And so therefore we just shut out. 33 persons went home. Okay, and they thought that would have been the right thing to do rather than suffer that risk for the remainder of Royal Bank. Okay, so you want to be very careful. And that was it was the biggest client, but one client. Okay, and so what happened at that time, we did have very big manuals of the artwork, but again, were we educated enough? Was there awareness? Did we have somebody telling us that in France this artwork is stolen? And when we produced the evidence, indeed, there was a big book of about 800 paintings, and halfway through, on page 300 and some, there was a copy of the painting, and we knew that we had it, and so therefore we were charged with collusion. So I think that case is still going on, and they so far paid a big fine, but they would have gotten off for the tax evasion charges. Okay, that again, like I said, would have suffered more reputational risk for Royal Bank as a whole. So that's why we closed out. Okay, so you want to be careful and you want to ensure that you understand products and services, and when a new product is coming on stream, you understand how it works. Particularly in foreign countries, you want to ensure that if it's a Spanish-speaking country, somebody can speak Spanish, speak and read it, or French and what have you, to be able to protect you and the institution. Okay. The book goes on to talk about people and the psychology of the workplace, and they say that laws are rational, but human beings are not. There's division and contrast on how people interpret there's an acronym that like I normally use, and I say it's called KUBA. Is you give people the knowledge, the understanding, then they believe you, then they start to act. But again, like I say, we're working with human beings, and I think our expectations are very high, and sometimes, well, most times we become disappointed. And then there are policy and procedures, but nobody follows the policy 100%. You probably get a 70-30 ratio, okay? And so if in your mindset, you know that this is what the policy says, we disseminate it, however we are dealing with human beings, you could use a little bit of discretion in, dealing with human beings. Like, for instance, Royal Bank, and I always say there's a difference between the Canadians and the Swiss. The Canadians are way more conservative. They never ever want to be in trouble with the regulator, even though they are sometimes, but they put in conditions for human behavior and mistakes and what have you. Whereas the Swiss, they are very business is tough, and the bottom line is most important, and so they are way less stringent. And so if the regulator asks for one ID, whereas Royal Bank will ask for two, and they say we put in some conditions for human error, the Swiss will say no, one. In fact, we don't even need one. And so that's just the difference of culture between the two types of institutions. Okay. You want to listen properly too. A lot of people, and I find myself doing it as well. And again, human beings, and we have to learn to control our behaviors to a certain extent. We don't listen, we listen to respond. And so a lot of times persons don't even get out their full thought, and we already have a rebuttal because we know that, again, this is management and see junior level. And so I'm in charge, and so I'm the boss, is what I say. And so I don't even have to really validate or listen to what this person has to say. And just as human beings, we can do a better job of listening to and accepting what the person is saying from their perception, rather than just listening to respond and to think that they automatically wrong and I am always right. Okay, so you want to, all of us can do better at listening. You want to ask questions. You want to justify, what the person say. You don't want to just quote a policy back to what Ochi said. Oh, you should know the values and the motto and the whatever. No, because I'm in trouble now. No, I should have known it. I should have been taught it all along. And then perhaps I would have been able to mitigate this risk or this trouble or this grievance that I'm in right now. Okay, because all of these types of things, they drive non-compliance. Everybody's showing up with their own agenda because I don't know the values and goals. So I am showing up with bullet and go. That's what Miss Bullet say. That's how she feel. And so if there's no guide to let me know, these are our values. These are our beliefs. This is the goal that we are trying to achieve every day. It becomes very difficult. And you want to create influence. And then again, somebody mentioned awareness training. People a lot of times they don't think outside the box. They outside of what their job function is. A lot of people just do what they're told. And so therefore, if there is no awareness, if there's no, showing me these are the risks involved, or these are the possibilities, people just show up and act as robots and do what they are told. And if they are not being told that look out for this, or these are possible breaches, then they simply don't know. And we cannot assume that everybody is at our level. And if they are not at our level, something wrong with them. No, they perhaps weren't trained. Okay, some of us are information seeking. We will ask questions. Most persons, like I said, for fear of victimization, they are afraid to speak up. Most persons feel like what they say are going to fall on deaf ears, and it does. And again, who can make a difference and who can make it the change? we are corporate Bahamas. It's us that are toxic. It's us that are unethical. Okay. And so it's us that has to make the change. Okay. It's us, each one of us, that has to make a conducive environment for people to show up to work every day and to be able to perform and to be happy. Okay. So you want to find out, these are my staff members. What drives people to do the right thing? What makes them want to show up to work and do what they ought to do? Okay, how do we assist them in being ethical and making the right decision? How do we make the policies and procedures more readable? What do we do to curb this problem that most human beings have, where they cannot read, or they don't have the patience to sit down and read? Do we do audiobooks? What plans are we gonna implement to stop just checking the box and we need this mission, we need this goal, and to have persons actually believe it and act it out each day? How can we communicate better with everybody being overworked and underpaid and on edge? Okay, so they are a few questions, a lot of questions, I should say, that I asked. Okay, and these topics, a lot of times we just talk about it. How do we actually make a difference? How do we turn this conversation into action? Okay, when we get into chapter 5, it talks about remuneration. It talks about whistleblowing in regards to remuneration. Back in when Obama was president, there was a lot of bailouts. There were a lot of banks that were too big to fail, and the government bailed out the bank. And after investigating, Obama saw that even though these banks got bailed out, the CEO basically had a nonchalant attitude, because no matter whether the bank was successful or not, he had his his contract fixed that he would get a payout if the bank failed or not. And so Obama put laws into place to ensure that should banks fail, there's no big payout for the CEO. Okay, and I first started with, I think, with the credit crisis with Freddie Mae and Fannie Mae. Okay, and it had to go so far as to being put into law to avoid these CEOs, or to help them to be held accountable. And the book talks about being accountable versus being responsible. Okay, and it says the difference between the two is that many can be held to account, but each person must be responsible for their own behavior. And that's why I went to the point where I said it's us that can show up to work every day, and we can listen, and we can be better communicators, and we can act ethically, and we can know what the vision and mission statements are. And when we get into positions, we can ensure that when persons speak up, they're not victimized. And even if they have a point that we cannot fix, we give reason, or we give a response, and we document it. But again, until, like I said, we have lobbyists, or we have audit that's checking goodwill, that's checking mission and vision, that's ensuring that something is done about the customer service level, that ensuring that it's not the norm that everybody is overworked and underpaid because there's a pandemic. And the health and the well-being of the persons that are at work are being destroyed. Okay, nobody cares and nobody pays attention to it. And so we have to get to the point where we, if national insurance requires you to have a health and wellness committee, what are they doing? What are the regulators doing to ensure that, the financial services sector is productive? Okay, so we have to advocate for these things to be checked. And normally at the beginning of an audit, when the auditors come in, they ask senior management, are there any areas that you would like to check? That us personally, are there any areas within the, like I said, they have about 100 functions to check, and they say, we come to check 10, we're on a rotational basis, so we'll check 10 functions. However, we have 2 open to check. And we as the executives need to speak up and say, yes, I'd like you to check ethics, or I'd like you to check the Health and Wellness Committee and their effectiveness, or I'd like you to check the mission and the motto and statement and just a test to see how many of the staff are even aware of the code of conduct or how we should be operating. How many are actually responsible? How many know the difference between who is responsible and who is to be accountable? How many? Anybody? You're quiet. You're quiet. Anybody?
Say again, please.
No? Sorry?
Can you say that again, please? The question.
I can't hear you, Dimitri.
I said, can you say the question again, please? Excuse me.
Yeah, I said, how many persons can speak up to audit and saying, these are what I want you to check? Who is accountable? Who knows the mission and the values and the goals? Can somebody check it? Can it be enforced?
Very good question.
Okay, and we don't want to wait. We don't want to wait till something goes wrong. We want to make sure that these things are enforced before things get out of control. And I actually want us to do a reading so we can see how out of control and how things, a very popular brand, how the staff are treated and what happens when these things are not enforced. Okay, and any questions?
Not so
Okay,
far.
do any of our companies, are they checking like the carbon footprint? Are we using recyclable ink? Are we having those conversations as yet? Going paperless? And anything about the environment being tested? Are we talking about our corporate social responsibility? No?
Unfortunately, no.
Sorry?
I said no.
No?
No.
No, Delisa? You hear anything about the carbon footprint?
I haven't, and I don't really want to respond because it seemed like everything's discussed. It hasn't been brought up as yet. So,
Okay.
but no.
Yeah, so that's another thing that, how environmentally sound is your company? What is the carbon footprint? How socially responsible you are? A lot of companies, they've gone paperless, to protect the trees. They are aware of climate change. However, they stop at that. And so in the US and the UK, a lot of companies they are testing their carbon footprint, and they are ensuring that they put in initiatives to make sure that their company is environmentally sound. In the Bahamas, when we talk about corporate social responsibility, it's more geared towards donations and how we help our communities, and I guess any volunteering services. And I think for the most part, I also teach customer service, and we go out into the financial services sector, and we do an assessment on CSR. And we have found that while Royal Bank has been around from 1908, more than 100 years, Scotia has been around for 60 plus years. I don't know how long CIBC, but the island locks and the gaming boards have done way more for the community than any bank that has been listed. And they also more consistent every Christmas, every back to school and whatnot. They're very consistent with ensuring that they give back. And so the gaming houses far outdo the well-established banks. And of course, we attribute that to them being Bahamian gaming companies versus Canadian banks or Swiss banks. And so I guess because they are rooted here, they are more inclined to make sure that that their community outreach is much greater. We do have some individual banks, whereas I know one of the offshore Swiss banks, they've adopted the Palmdale Primary School, and what they do 2 times a week, they help the students at the Palmdale Primary with homework and stuff of that nature. And so they do that for their social responsibility. Then of course we have the Red Cross Fair each year, and before the pandemic, and the banks do make very big donations to that. But it's expanding, like I said, outside of just donations, but what is your environmental impact, and what is your carbon footprint, and how does your customers view you? And like I said, with the establishment of the ombudsman, we should see more information coming out in terms of I guess how companies perform and how socially responsible they are. I want us to read. Let me see what page is it, so we can talk a little bit more, and again, for awareness purposes. And I think we may have discussed Apple. Everybody has an iPhone, correct? And everybody is aware of Apple and what
Yes,
happens there. And so we are aware of that story. We read that already, Delisa?
that was Ivan, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
You said yes, we read that? Ivania? Hello? You all sleep or you agree? What happening?
You wait, I'm listening.
We wait, Dimitri, we read after Apple story, the iPhone story.
Actually, I didn't. What's it about?
Okay, great. I'm glad you asked. Thank you so much for asking. I need a volunteer to go to page 195. Any volunteers for reading? No, everybody quiet, or do I just pick somebody who is very clear?
I'll read it.
Okay.
Let me just find it.
Okay, 195.
Boy.
And you can read some and then relax some more because it goes on for a little while, but we want to get the gist of the whole story. So you can read about a page and a half and then relax some more to read a page and a half, and then Maria, please. Okay,
Okay.
and then we can discuss.
Miss
Okay.
Bullet, do we have the same, what does your page 195 start with?
It says Appendix 5, Corporate Social Responsibility, Apple and Foxconn.
Okay, hold a second.
Is
Let me
that
see
the
if I can find that. I don't, no, I don't see that.
Does everybody else have that?
You said Appendix 5?
Yes.
I'm not seeing an Appendix 5 in mine, Mom.
You got your book from offline? Does everybody else see Appendix 5? Maria, you have Appendix 5, 195? Okay, Delisa?
Yeah, that's mine. Corporate social responsibility, Appendix 5.
Yeah, so you perhaps need to go online because I have the book offline. And it's cohort 13. Do you have access to online?
Yes, I might try to download it again right now so I could see.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. Okay, so Dimitri, you have it?
Yeah, I have it. Just waiting on everybody
Sorry?
to tell me. Just waiting on everybody to
Okay.
tell me they're ready to go.
Okay, are we ready? Omar, Forbes, Ochi, are we ready?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm
Okay,
ready.
I'll start for us. Start for us on
Okay.
195, Dimitri, please.
All right, corporate social responsibility, Apple and Foxconn. Case study, Apple and Foxconn, beginning with the introduction of the first iPhone in 2007. The smartphone industry has grown enormously into an increasingly complex market, which cannot be treated as a single segment or sector. Apple was established in 1976 by Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne, and began at the manufacture of the Apple I computer kit, which was effectively a single component of what we would consider today a complete personal computer. The subsequent years saw Apple develop into its own line of personal desktop computers, laptop computers, personal computers, smartphones, and personal music storage systems to become the world leader in the design, manufacture, and distribution of high-tech personal computing devices. The success story has not been without periods of difficulty for Apple, especially in the mid-1980s to the mid-1990s, and Steve Jobs was forced to resign after a boardroom coup. In the period of his absence, Apple released many failed products, made unrealistic goals and forecasts, and engaged in inefficient practices, such as manufacturing its own products within the US and creating a complex supply chain that was not reactive to demand. Steve Jobs returned to Apple in 1996, and by 1998 had regained control of his company. After all, he was a co-founder. A strategic decision was taken to shut the Apple manufacturing branch and to close the factories and warehouses, reducing inventory and becoming more efficient in achieving better product margins. In addition, this led to enhanced secrecy in a highly competitive market by not revealing any information on new products prior to launch and generating the hype for which Apple is now famous. Manufacturing was diverted to subcontractors, keeping costs under strict control, and enhancing the speed of turnaround for new and amended products and components. Such is the extent of the subcontracting by Apple that 748 locations have been used in the manufacture of products and components, which has increased the company's direct and indirect employment massively over the past 15 years. Much of Apple's manufacturing is conducted overseas from its US base, with over 600 manufacturing locations in Asia and 330 of these in mainland China. The advantages to Apple are enormous. It has minimized the labor costs and suppliers that have used Apple's access to the Chinese supply chain within a highly developed industrial cluster have contributed to reducing production costs. It has been estimated that this has reduced the production cost of an iPhone to 40% of the cost of production in the US. These cost reductions have been accompanied by and driven by huge flexibility in the production process. One major subcontractor, Foxconn, maintains dormitories on factory grounds to allow the immediate mobilization of thousands of workers and instant changes to assembly lines in response to changes in production demand. The scale of the contracts offered by Apple influence massively subcontractors' practices and also their treatment of their workers. The first raising of the treatment of workers by Apple subcontractors. In 2006, accounts of visits to 2 Apple iPod factories in China appeared in the media. Poor working conditions, very low wages, and forced overtime were witnessed. The first report was followed by an enormous amount of press coverage and scrutiny by advocacy groups like the Fair Labor Association, an international organization with its headquarters in Washington, D.C., and with offices in China and Switzerland. The result of all this publicity was to place Apple in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons, rather than hailed as the US leader in innovation and job creation. Apple was portrayed as being responsible for prime examples of the dangers and harm of the relentless pursuit of globalization brings. Yeah.
Okay, I'll continue.
Let me continue. Boy, it's a lot. Ms. Bullard,
Sorry, I didn't hear you. Yes.
you want me to continue or you?
Yeah, Delisa, can you continue for us, please? Thank you, Dimitri.
No plan B.
Okay, 1 second.
Only?
Give me a minute, Liam.
Okay.
Okay, so we're after the appendix. Sorry, Dimitri, where did you leave off at?
Okay, I'm at 196, examples of the abuses of Apple and its subcontractors.
Okay. Number 1, child labor used by Foxconn at the Yantai facilities. Foxconn admitted to the use of child labor in late 2012. They targeted internships at school students who were below China's legal minimum working age. Schools required students to complete internships at the factories and work on assembly lines in return for the academic credits necessary for graduation. Their pay was $244 per month, with compulsory overtime required until allotted tasks were completed. Foxconn was criticized for not checking the identity documents of the workers so that some students as young as 14 were working at its factories. The legal minimum age is 16. Foxconn ceased the policy of internships immediately. Apple's response. Apple subsequently uncovered a further 106 cases of child labor in the year after the Foxconn revelations. Many suppliers had recruited underage workers who had forged identity documents, and one labor agency was found to have been conspiring with families to produce the forgeries. To remedy the situation, Apple took steps to ensure its suppliers' code of conduct was adhered to fully, and to force the labor agency to pay for the underage workers' education and give them an income equal to factory pay, which they completed their schooling. 2, forced overtime at Foxconn's Shenzhen plants. In 2010, Foxconn was exposed in the media for overworking employees to the point of suicide. That year, there were 17 attempted suicides reported, of which 13 resulted in death. These raised the questions of whether working conditions were humane or not, and also resulted in demonstrations against increasing globalizations and against Apple in particular. A joint investigation into Foxconn factory conditions was initiated by a conglomerate of 20 universities and revealed the following: extreme levels of overtime with 80 to 100 hours a month being cited, whereas the prevailing Chinese labor laws maximum allowed was 36 hours. The speed of the assembly line meant workers were unable to move from one spot because if they did, they could not complete their task. 13% of workers had passed out at work. 24 of female workers had reported menstrual disorders caused by stress and excess overtime. There was no ability to raise any grievances as all workers were isolated by the pressure of work. Foxconn's response. In response to the criticism, Foxconn initiated suicide countermeasures, including suicide nets, no suicide pledges as part of employment contracts, and counselors and monks were made available to provide emotional and spiritual guidance. These measures have not been completely effective as suicides still do happen, but are more in line with overall national suicide rates. And the counselors have been criticized for violating individuals' privacy by attempting to pressure workers into informing on each other's conduct violations. Apple and corporate social responsibility. Despite the considerable challenges of monitoring such a large number of suppliers, Apple has been proactive in addressing workers' conditions in the factories producing its products. It has a supplier code of conduct. It conducts audits on suppliers and publish annual supplier responsibility reports on its website. Pressure from Apple has reduced the use of child labor, excessive overtime, and unsafe practices by some contractors, together with increasing benefits and pay for workers. Areas of improvement: worker and management training. Managers and supervisors are trained in management practices, such as worker management communications, anti-harassment policy, and worker protection and safeguarding. Workers are trained on their rights, health and safety, and the protection offered by local laws. Both management and workers are trained in the supplier code of conduct. Further professional and personal development programs are also being made available, offering technical software management skill and ability to obtain higher education qualifications and advanced degrees. 2, the elimination of safety hazards, excessive overtime and child labor. Apple's supplier code of conduct obliges suppliers to provide its workers with proper personal protective equipment, secure emergency exits, and to complete in-house occupational hazard monitoring activities. Attempts have also been made to reduce excessive overtime in factories, and Apple publishes annual compliance with codes of conduct rates. It is interesting to note that the code states a maximum of 60 hours per week, which is considerably more than the EU Working Time Directive, which sets a maximum of 48 hours per week. 3, elimination of child labor laws. Elimination of child labor in subcontractors' factories. Apple is making efforts to eliminate the use of child labor within the entire consumer electronics industry. It has pursued a zero tolerance policy for child labor and ensured that victims are returning to school with compensation for damages to education and lost earnings. 3, third-party oversight. Apple joined the previously mentioned FLA and the findings and recommendations of its audits are available on its website. In association with Verite, it developed a substantial workplace program to explore practices to promote open communication between the workers, suppliers, and Apple to address workers' concerns and implement practices that are found to be most effective across its suppliers. 5, finally, it enjoyed the Inishi Fiat Design Handle Electronics program in 2018, which is a nonprofit organization that promotes sustainable trade in collaboration with the Chinese government and electronics giants such as Dell, Hewlett-Packard, and Philips. The program aims to reduce worker turnover rates and wastage, improve energy efficiency, and facilitate dialogue between workers and managers. Continue.
Okay, great. Thank you. We can stop there and you can read the rest in your own time. But I just want to ask some questions like what the book is asking and get some feedback. So are we aware of any of this? Apple is like the #1 brand and everybody runs towards iPhone. Are we aware? Do we see any of this in the media? Do they have a strong brand and a strong reputation? Jensen? Did you know any of this or is this a surprise? Is Jensen there? Or Omar? No? Dimitri?
I've
Okay.
Sorry, I've heard of it before. Among other brands that are practicing currently unethical practices, I think Fashion Nova is one now that's getting a lot of heat. However, objectively, it's only there for people that I consider myself, I like to investigate things like this. I'm always on the hunt for a new documentary or expose or something like that. So I have heard of this before, but for like regular people out there, just, who watch mainstream news or don't really look for this sort of information, no, I don't think that it's a readily known thing.
Right. But something to this extent, why isn't this in the news every day? Considering how strong the brand is.
Well, I think a big reason behind that is the strength of the brand, right? Whenever you have brands that are very strong, they also have a lot of PR, they have a lot of pull as well, that they can, I don't want to say that they can quell news or they can kind of squash a story, but they can, they can turn the publicity around, or they can, minimize it as much as they want to. And at the end of the day, how many people really, I don't want to say it that way, but how many people really care? How many people really care about child labor and about these unfair practices? A lot of people just want their stuff. They want the things that they want, and they want it at the price or, the level of ease that they can get it at. They're not really concerned about that. So you have to make it something that's to the forefront of people's minds, even like I'll go back to an issue now that's going on with Fashion Nova and a lot of fast beauty or what they call fast fashion brands, and the mess that they're creating not only in their factories but also in the runoff and the excess waste that they're creating, and that's affecting small countries. So do people really care? That's the question that I'm putting out there. And I know it's kind of off topic, but do people really care? They want their clothes or they want to catch a sale, and they're not really thinking about the back end of it. So I think that a big part of us in being in the positions that we're in is making these to the forefront of people's minds, like actually pushing these notions to their thoughts and to their agendas.
Okay, correct, and good, and that's a very, a big challenge, for the industry, and when you have very strong brands leading the way, and you read this type of information about it, they're not suffering any reputational risk, and like you said, in I guess whoever their target market is, they simply don't care. So what do regulators do? What do compliance persons do when I guess just back in the category of being too big to fail, right? I guess the regulator or the government has to step in and say, we have to enforce, and we have to find, and we have to do, be more vigilant, if we are promoting, corporate responsibility, not just for one, but for all. If your brand is big enough, and it doesn't, it isn't applicable to you. And so they are some of the things that need to be fixed, internationally at the standard level, to ensure that it's inclusive of all, or not just for smaller, institutions that cannot pay these things away. But I realized too, with the cruise ships, with the wastage that they are putting into the ocean, the fine is actually cheaper. I think the fine would have been, and I watched something, some documentary on TV where, let's just say it costs $1 million to pay the fine, but it costs $4 million to collect the garbage and collect the waste and remove it from the cruise ship. And so the cruise ship have opted to, we are going to dump into the ocean and just pay the fine, because the fine is way lower than what it costs to remove the waste. So again, that's what regulators, and persons, I guess, in charge of setting international standard, the FATF, the OECD, has to look at, what it costs versus what the fine is, and to double those fines or triple them, as a deterrent to, stop the wastage into the ocean, or for Apple, to fix these things, and because it's definitely, like you said, not affecting their brand. Another, what I witnessed when I was auditing a bank with the finance department, whereas the regulator has administrative policies and administrative fines, and they set dates. They normally say 120 days after the end of the year, your financials have to be in, and some things have to be in by June 30th, and what have you. And I witnessed in a finance department where the financials were late every month. And so I said, what is happening here? And basically what was happening was that the regulator charges $250 a day, which is, for Scotiabank or Royal Bank, that's a small amount. Okay. And so what the finance department was saying was, oh, we have like about 10 days because our limit is $2,000, and we could approve up to $2,000 worth of charges before anybody know or anything is done to us. And so every month they were late and using 10 and 20 days and paying this $250 fine because they thought it was a joke, and to me that was revenue leakage. And so what I did is at the end of my audit report, I said their approval limits have to be taken away, or it has to be reduced to $50, because they feel, we couldn't tell the regulator to increase their fine. So they were, they knew that the report was due on the 30th. They doing it on the 10th because their limit is $2,000, and they could just pay it. Okay, and so you don't want to develop those type of attitudes, and they were training persons coming in, new persons coming in the department, like that was the norm. Oh, you don't have to rush to finish the financials at the end of the month and submit it, because we have sufficient money to pay the fine. Okay, so the fines need to be more stringent, and regulators need to, find other deterrents to put in place for these companies that feel that we just can pay the fine and mind our business. All right. Okay, so any questions or concerns?
Not at this point.
Sorry, Simone, I didn't hear you.
I said, no, not so far, not
No?
at this point.
Oh.
No.
Okay, yeah, so chapter 4 was pretty straightforward, and next week we will go into chapter 5 and we will talk about the whistleblowing policy. And there is a let me see what they call it. They don't call it the whistleblowing policy, but there are there's an Integrity Commission Bill 2017 that touches on corruption and whistleblowing to a point. And then the Freedom of Information Act has a section about whistleblowing and how it should be handled. But at your institution, there should be a policy. You should know, should there be an event? Normally, if you are at entry level, you just report to your manager. But sometimes it's the manager or the CEO or the compliance professional who needs to be reported. And so if you don't feel confident, there should be a policy that tells you how to go about making a report. If you are a larger company and they have an ombudsman, it's normally to the ombudsman, or you just pick up the phone and you call the regulator in confidence, but there should be a policy. And I want you to search out in your institutions this week to look for it, just so you can be aware. It should not be a secret, and I hope when you start asking, they don't be like, oh, why someone will know about the whistleblowing policy? What's she about to do? But you should be aware and to see how it works. And again, like chapter 5 goes on to talk about remuneration and more corporate governance. So next week we'll look at this integrity bill and the Freedom of Information Act. And then, like I said, when the week after, we are going to go through the paper. So I want you to spread the paper out, look at the questions, and start to do your research so we can have a provocative discussion. Okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Sounds good. Mhm.
Sorry, somebody was breaking up. Somebody said something just now. I couldn't hear.
No, we just were all saying, okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, great. Okay, so good guys. If you have any questions or concerns, just let me know. And otherwise, enjoy your weekend and take care. And we'll meet again next week.
Thank you. Do the same.
Thank
Take
you.
care. And
Thank
thank you all.
Okay,
Have a great
thank
day.
you. Okay,
Thank
take care.
you.